Hi, I'm here in Ada today, and we are here for the official unveiling, the public unveiling of the Blank Slate Monument. I was here in December when the artist was here to talk to us about this piece and some of the other pieces he has here at the Osromba Studios. And at the time, we were not allowed to reveal this monument that is going to be shipped to the United States and going to be revealed there. But today we are able to show you exactly what this piece is all about. I described it in one of my videos, which didn't really do it justice until you actually see it. So today I'm able to show you everything, and you can see for yourself how much this evokes so much emotion, especially at this time when there's so much racial tension in the United States, as well as other parts of the world where there's uprising right now because of systemic racism. Now, this piece is specific to the US history, and you see the three layers of people, actually four, because you have the enslaved African, you have the person who's the military person fighting for the Union, and then you have the woman of modern day, and then the child on her back. So you have four generations of people represented in this particular monument. So let's go in and hear a little bit more detail about it, and then put in the comments what you think. I would love to know your thoughts on this one. It definitely is something that evokes a lot of emotion, especially with what we've seen over the last few weeks.
Keep it 100. So grateful for the life I live, grateful for the fishes I see. I'm so grateful for the love I'm receiving. Love are the only thing, only for man I prefer. No need to stress, no need to stress. Oh no need to stress no more.
So we are going to get to see the statue that I was here for before. If you didn't see the previous episode I did here at this installation where I said that we were not allowed to take pictures of it, check out that video. But today it's the official reveal that we can take photos before the piece is taken to the US. It was supposed to be taken before, but as you know, with COVID-19, a lot of things happened with borders closing and the whole world shifting. So the sculpture has been here still, and is now being prepared to send to the US. And there's such a significance behind this piece of work. Unfortunately, the artist is not here today, but he's here in spirit. So we will take a look at it in a few moments, and then you can tell me your thoughts in the comments, what you think about this piece. So this is the sculpture. I'm starting off with the flag of the United States here. You see the stars and stripes. It's all in black. As I pull out, you see the rest of this piece, which is revealing of the painful history of the United States. And even though this was created quite some time ago, you just think about the way things are now, and it just hits differently than when I first saw this back in December.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming out to join us today at Osromba Studio in Ada, beautiful Ghana, center of the earth. So I'm here with Morris Sinclair. My name is Terry Opong, and behind us you can see is an amazing work of art that we've worked on for the past 2 years.
Yeah, approximately
about 2 years now. And so we'll quickly give you an explanation of what this means to us. As they say, art imitates life, so therefore this can mean something completely different to you. All right. So Morris, how did this happen?
Well, it's Terry met a friend in New York that wanted to have a piece commissioned to basically demonstrate the struggle of people of color, African Americans, and African diaspora through the history of time, especially highlighting the period of the American Confederate, the American Civil War, the role of the black heroes, the role of the black soldier and black people during the Confederate War, up through today. So from the time of about what, 400 and something years ago?
500.
Yep, about 500 years ago through slavery. Just through time, how we have really endured a little bit about our history and how we've been treated and so on, up through today, where the figure on top represents modern day time. So Terry, you can perhaps give a little bit explanation of what the pieces are.
So obviously at the base of the image we see some people say slaves. We like the term enslaved Africans, right? So these were not slaves. These were people that were enslaved. And so at the base you see that happening right here. This was done a year ago. And the interesting thing to us is that, rest in peace to George Floyd, we went through this again recently, about 2 weeks ago, and the image that we see here is kind of startling to us, and that's why we say art imitates life, because Kwame being who he is, no one knew this would happen. And that's if you look at the imagery, you're seeing something that, again, has caused the world to kind of shift, right? So we hope this image can continue along that path. And so that is what you see at the base, right? So that is what essentially has began, or part of it essentially is what we have today, where this contributes to what we see happening up here. And so in the middle, holding this together, is you see a black Confederate soldier. Reason being, when you think Confederacy, you typically think the Confederate flag. You think of racist, redneck white people. You think of people in the South who lost the war so many years ago, but are so adamant about keeping this image alive, right? Of something that for many Americans was treason, right? These were people that wanted to leave the Union. So how do you celebrate such a treasonous act? And in Ghana, to make this symbolic, we have Kotoka International Airport. People ask the same question. How do you name an airport after a traitor? And so what we're showing here is basically in the middle is African American, enslaved, freed African who fought for the Confederacy. And the interesting thing that you see is the American flag that he's holding is torn, right? So if we understand history from the Confederacy to World War I and II, and shout out to Spike Lee's new movie, The Five Bloods, it talks about this. Black soldiers went to war, and because many were poor, they could not avoid the draft, right? So a lot of wealthy white people, Donald Trump avoided going to war because they had money. And so in America at the time, fast forward to World War II, or Vietnam War specifically, about 32% of the people that were in the actual war were African American, but African Americans only made 11% of the population, right? So when you come back from all this fighting for this country that loves you, they don't take care of you, right? GI Bill that was supposed to make sure you can get a house and go to get educated did not happen. And so that continues the effects of that 3-4 generations later, where if we understand wealth is primarily driven by household ownership and education, imagine you go to fight for this country, you come back, and then you can't buy a house, you can't go to school, right? But you literally went to war for this nation. And so that's what you see here in the middle. And Morris, you mentioned something about this piece. About
The memory jug, right? The memory jug basically I'm just learning about the memory jug actually myself, but it basically is a piece that commemorates, the past, and it has different pieces and amulets on it that signify certain things for to keep our memories of our ancestors. Kwame Akoto Bamfo is the artist that created this, and I always sort of it baffles me how he manifested this whole thing to really be part of the past, and it brings it right into the future. Because there on the top, well, first of all, the Confederate soldier, he's standing right on the man's head, which is very reminiscent of what happened recently with the untimely death of George Floyd. And if anybody sees the face of the figure on the ground, it very much resembles that whole scenario of George Floyd. The woman on the top, she is a protester. She has a placard and a lantern and a baby on her back, which represents the vision of the generation of the future. So this says so many things. There's a noose on the Confederate soldier's neck while he's fighting in the American Civil War, supported by his African ancestor. So this is 4 generations right here in this piece. And when we really think about how we can pull this whole narrative together, there's so many ways that you can break it apart. So I think that everybody who sees this piece has to come to terms with what they feel or what they get out of it and interpret it in their own way. But the bottom line is it shows the transformation of the African struggle through time and almost as it has ended, from the beginning up until now. So what we're going to do is we're going to have each person, just see this and really think about what they would do. Perhaps even think about what they would write on the placard themselves if they were the one holding the placard.
Yeah, definitely. So as you can see, the message is Jamaican patois.
On that one, yeah.
Basically saying you thought it was over, but it's definitely not over. So that's what we're seeing today. If we're currently here in Adab, we go home and turn on our TV screen and watch America, it feels like it's a war, right? You see people protesting, and it's really symbolic of what we see here, how also right now black women are leading a lot of the fights that we've seen. Breonna Taylor, we will not rest until your murderers are jailed, right? So that's from Ghana to you. Definitely you're seeing that also on the back, just to really bring that point home. You're seeing the future, right? But the future, if you look at it, the baby he has here, he's watching, right? So it's not a baby or a child that's not aware, right? And the children, we also saw the video of the young woman who was protesting, right? I think she was 7-something years old. And you see the passion, right? 7 years old, understanding that, listen, I do not have freedom because this is not a just system. And so you see that even the youth and the future are involved in this continued fight for not just independence, but more so economic independence. Because voting is nice, it's cute, it works, but we really need to start focusing on economics. And so that's what you can see here. And so as Morris said, when people see this, what our hope and goal is that you'll give us more feedback. So this is going to be shipped to the United States. Kwame already has one such statue at the Equal Justice Initiative in Tennessee. And so he recently won an award for that sculpture. Hopefully this will do something impactful. We pray to unveil this in New York at the Africa Center in Harlem, New York. And Harlem symbolically has been a place where people like Kwame Nkrumah drew inspiration and truly understood the way that black people are oppressed, right? That's where he made friendships. And that's why when he came to Ghana, the mindset was different from the status quo that existed, which was more comfortable with the way things were with the British. And you have Kwame coming and basically identifying with the people. And so when we do this in New York, that's kind of our goal as well, to really galvanize what New York means to the African struggle.
I was really happy to be invited today to the official unveiling, the second unveiling, I should say, for the public for the Blank Slate Monument. I did come here in December, I think it was December or early January, December. And at that time, we were not allowed to take photos of it, but we took in the emotion. And today, the emotion is equally the same, the impact. I'll even say it goes a step further now than it did at that time, because now with all of the racial tension around the world, after the killing of George Floyd, which basically was the catalyst to this movement that's happening right now, because we all know that there are many, many others who have been killed by police officers, unarmed black people. And now that it's happened to George Floyd, this whole movement. So seeing this monument, it's all layered, and it makes you really feel the pain and the struggles and the continued struggle that black people go through around the world, particularly in the U.S. with the way things are right now, with the history of slavery, with the history of Jim Crow laws, with the history of black people fighting in the U.S. military, but not getting the respect when they come home, being lynched. When people think of lynching, they think of it as being so far away. Believe it or not, I had a boyfriend whose father's friends were lynched on a regular basis. They were from the South. So to think that I was dating someone who told me his father's friends were regularly lynched, we're not that far removed from it. So this monument, that middle piece where you see the soldier, he's dressed in this uniform because he's proudly fighting for his country, the United States. But yet when he gets home, he's disrespected, and you see the noose on his neck. You just really, really see and you feel not only what happened then, but what happens now. That you are putting so much into your country, but yet you're not respected.
And what about in Canada? How is the sentiment there? I mean, what happens? People really don't hear about these things happening in Canada about this time.
Yeah, people don't think about Canada when it comes to racism, but racism definitely exists in Canada. I know the narrative has always been that Canada was a safe haven because of the history of the slaves who escaped in the US and came through the underground to go to Canada. So Canada was seen as a safe haven. That's because Canada abolished slavery before the United States did. It's because a lot of those laws that were in place in the US ended earlier in Canada than they did in the US. So it appears to be that Canada has no racism, but it's still there. Systematically, you still find that there's people who, their grandparents, their great-grandparents, they also were people who owned slaves. There's a whole communities throughout the country of Black people who are descendants of people who came through the Underground Railroad, and their families experienced racism. And to this day, Black people experience racism in Canada. When I was 5 years old, that was when I first realized I'm Black, because I had somebody in school who was calling me the N-word and making fun of me all the time. Through elementary school, my brother and I being called the dirty kids getting on the bus, people plugging their noses saying we stunk because of our skin color, saying we don't bathe. I was fighting a lot. I'll never forget the fight that I had with someone who accused Black people, immigrants, of coming and stealing jobs of white people. He said, your father, you people steal our jobs. I got so angry. So angry I fought this guy. Like, seriously. And systematically, you see that young people are treated differently, as far as you'll see a young Black kid in high school who may misbehave and will be suspended. But a white kid who does the same thing would just get a "don't do that again," a warning. So systematically, that young Black teen in Canada is already seeing that the system is stacked against them, because you've done the same thing that a white kid did, but yet you got punished more harshly, being suspended or being expelled, whereas they just got a warning. Their parents come in and talk to them, and it's A-okay. As an adult, it happens in the workplace. I worked with a manager who told me that when he sees resumes, CVs, that have names that don't sound like they're white people, he throws them in the garbage. So already, the odds are stacked against you if your name isn't white sounding, that you're not going to get a job because someone's throwing your resume in the garbage. So racism exists in Canada, not only for Blacks, but also the Indigenous people. The Indigenous people of Canada have really been discriminated against. Racism is just, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. So being here for this presentation today, this monument, I think it's going to evoke a lot of conversation. It's really going to incite a lot of emotion, especially with the bottom piece where the soldier's foot is on the head of the enslaved African on the bottom, because right now the imagery, there's this fly that keeps going around my face. Right now the imagery of seeing that makes you think of George Floyd, with the knee on the neck and the way that he was just losing his life right before our eyes. This image of seeing, and the irony of this is it's like his own Black brother whose foot is on his head. So you could look at it in a negative way, or you can look at it as this enslaved African went through brutality to get you to the next level. So you stood on his back. He lifted you up. That now you were able to be a soldier. Even though they disrespected you, he lifted you up to get there. And then now you are lifting up the next generation, which is the woman who's standing there, and she's dressed in contemporary clothes, she has a child on her back, and she has the placard, and she's shouting. So it's very layered. Each generation did something that uplifted the next, and it continues with what is happening now, is pushing the doors open for the next generation in the continued fight against racism.
Wow, great. Thank you, Ivy.
Thank you. So that's it for today. We are now leaving the Osramba Studios where the Inchinchen exhibit is, as well as that impactful, really, really thought-provoking piece that I just showed you. And I would love to hear from you in the comments what your thoughts are about that piece. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.